They say grief has 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. They forgot the 6th stage: debt. My name is Sarah. I am 32 years old, but I feel 50. I work double shifts at the county hospital, changing bedpans and checking vitals, standing on feet that haven't stopped throbbing since 2018. I drive a Honda Civic that rattles when I go over 40 miles per hour. I clip coupons for tuna. I haven't bought a new pair of jeans in 3 years. And yet, on the first day of every month, like clockwork, I write a check for $200. Pay to the order of Martha Miller. Martha is my mother-in-law, or rather, she is the mother of the ghost I live with. My husband, David, died 5 years ago, a brain aneurysm. It was quick, brutal, and unfair. He was 30. We were just starting. We had dreams of a house, a dog, maybe a baby. Instead, I got a funeral bill and a promise. I remember the last conversation we had, the night before he collapsed. He was worried about his mom. Martha was always sickly. She was always struggling. David was the good son, the provider. Even when we were broke, he would slip her a $50. If anything happens to me, David had joked, not knowing he was prophesizing his own end, "Promise you won't let her starve, Sarah. She's helpless without me." "I promise," I said. And I kept that promise for 60 months, 5 years, $12,000. $200 might not sound like a lot to some people. To me, it is my grocery budget. It is the difference between fixing my car heater or driving in the freezing cold. It is the vacation I never took. But every time Martha calls me, her voice trembling, coughing into the phone, I write the check. "Oh, Sarah," she would wheeze, "the heating bill. It's so high this winter. I'm wrapped in blankets, but my arthritis." Or, "The doctor says I need this special supplement, but it's not covered by insurance. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll just skip it." She plays me like a violin, and because I loved David and because I see his eyes in her face, I pay. I pay to keep his memory alive. I pay to ease the guilt of being the one who survived. But cracks form in everything, even in loyalty. The crack started last Tuesday. I had just finished a 16-hour shift. I was dead on my feet. I got the call at 7 a.m. "Sarah?" It was Martha. She sounded frantic. "It's the landlord. He says he's going to evict me if I don't pay the extra fee for the building maintenance. $300 by noon. I'm scared, Sarah. They're going to put my things on the street." "Martha?" I rubbed my temples. "I just sent the check last week. I don't have an extra $300 until payday. Please," she sobbed. "I have nowhere to go. David wouldn't want me on the street." That was her trump card. David. "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "I'll bring cash. I'll drive over. Don't worry." I hung up. I checked my account. I had $340. If I gave her $300, I had $40 for gas and food for 2 weeks. I went to the ATM. I withdrew the cash. Martha lives, or supposedly lives, in a run-down apartment complex on the south side of the city, about 40 minutes away. I usually just mail the checks. I hadn't visited in 6 months because she always said she was too sick for company or too ashamed of the mess. I drove there, fueled by caffeine and resentment. When I pulled up to the building, something was wrong. There was a moving truck in front of the entrance, but people weren't moving out, they were moving in. I walked up to the landlord's office on the first floor, Mr. Henderson, a grumpy man who smelled of cigarettes. "I'm here for Martha Miller's maintenance fee," I said, holding the envelope of cash. Mr. Henderson looked at me over his spectacles. "Who?" "Martha Miller, apartment 4B. She said you were evicting her." He frowned. He typed something into his computer. "Lady, I don't know who you are, but nobody lives in 4B named Martha Miller. That unit has been vacant for renovations for 3 months. A nice young couple just signed the lease today." "That's impossible. I send mail here, she gets it." "We have a forwarding service for old tenants. Martha Miller." "Yeah, here. She moved out 2 years ago. Said the neighborhood was too ghetto for her." "Moved out?" The room started to spin. Where does she live?" "Forwarding address is a P.O. box, but the mail carrier mentioned she bought a condo over in Willow Creek." Willow Creek. Willow Creek is a gated community. It has a golf course. It has a heated pool. It is where the doctors I work with live. I stood there, clutching the $300 that was supposed to save a poor old woman from homelessness. My hands started to shake, not from exhaustion, from rage. "Thank you," I whispered. I walked back to my rattling Honda Civic. I could have gone home. I could have called her and screamed, but I remembered something David used to say: verify before you diagnose. I put Willow Creek in my GPS. I wasn't going to call. I was going to visit. I drove to the other side of town. The landscape changed from cracked pavement to manicured lawns. The cars changed from Fords to Mercedes. I bluffed my way through the security gate by saying I was a home health aide. My scrubs helped. I found the address listed in the public records on my phone, which I checked at a red light. Unit 12, a beautiful townhouse with flower boxes in the windows. There was a car in the driveway, not a rust bucket, a Lexus, a pearled white Lexus SUV, probably a 2023 model. And there, sitting on the front porch, drinking iced tea with two other women, was Martha. She wasn't wrapped in blankets. She wasn't coughing. She was wearing a tennis outfit. She had highlights in her hair. She looked healthy. She looked radiant. I parked my car down the street and I rolled down the window to listen. "Oh, Martha, this complex is just divine, but isn't it expensive with the HOA fees?" I held my breath. Martha laughed. It was a light, carefree sound I had never heard before. "Oh, it's manageable," Martha said, taking a sip of her tea. "I have my pension, of course, and, well, I have my stupidity tax." "Your what?" the friend asked. "My daughter-in-law," Martha smirked. "Poor thing. She's a nurse, works like a dog. She thinks I'm destitute. She sends me a check every month, sometimes more if I cry a little." The women laughed. "Martha, you are terrible." "I'm not terrible," Martha said, waving a manicured hand. "I'm practical. David is gone. Why shouldn't I get a return on my investment for raising him? Besides, she's so desperate to please. It's pathetic, really. Last week, I told her I couldn't afford cough syrup, and she sent $50. That paid for my manicure." She held up her hand to admire her nails. Inside my car, the air felt hot, suffocating. I looked at my rough, scrubbed raw hands. I looked at the $300 in my passenger seat, money I was going to use to save her. She wasn't poor. She wasn't sick. She was a predator, and I was the prey. I reached for the door handle. I wanted to storm up there. I wanted to flip the table and scream. But then I stopped. Screaming is free. Screaming is easy. Screaming would give her a story to tell her friends about her crazy daughter-in-law. I reached out my hand from the door. I looked at the checkbook in my purse. I remembered the $12,000. I remembered the skipped meals. I remembered the cold nights. "No," I whispered. "I don't want to make a scene, Martha. I want to make a withdrawal." I started the car. I backed away quietly. She didn't see me. She thought she had a stupidity tax. She didn't know that the tax collector had just arrived, and the penalty for fraud, it was going to be much, much higher than $200 a month. In a hospital, we call this triage. When a patient arrives bleeding, you don't cry. You don't panic. You assess the damage. You check the vitals. You find the source of the hemorrhage, and you stop it. My bank account had been bleeding for 5 years, and the hemorrhage had a name: Martha Miller. I didn't go home and burn David's photos. I didn't call her screaming. Anger is a volatile fuel. It burns hot and fast, and then leaves you empty. I needed something more durable. I needed leverage. I got home, kicked off my worn-out sneakers, and went straight to the hallway closet. There, buried in the back behind winter coats I rarely wore, was David's box. It was a plastic bin filled with old paperwork I hadn't had the heart to throw away. Tax returns from 2015, warranty manuals for appliances that had already broken, and old insurance policies. I needed to understand the math. Martha bought a condo in Willow Creek. I did a quick Zillow search on my phone while driving home. The average sale price in that community was $350,000. The HOA fees alone were $600 a month. How? How did a woman who supposedly couldn't afford $30 cough syrup manage to buy a $300,000 property? I opened my laptop and accessed the county assessor's website. Property records are public. It is amazing what you can find if you know how to spell a last name. Search Martha E. Miller. Bingo. There it was. Address 12 Oak Lane, Willow Creek. Purchase date August 14th, 2019. Purchase price $345,000. Registered mortgage $150,000. I did the math quickly. If the house cost $345K and she only financed $150K, that meant she put down a down payment of $195,000 in cash, nearly $200,000. I looked at the date again, August 2019. David died in May 2019. 3 months. She bought a luxury home 3 months after we buried my husband. 3 months after she cried on my shoulder saying she didn't know how she would pay rent on her old apartment. Where did the money come from? David and I weren't rich. We lived paycheck to paycheck. We had a small life insurance policy, $20,000, that barely covered the funeral and his credit card debts. Or did we? I went back to David's box. I started rifling through the papers with a surgical frenzy. Receipts, love letters, pay stubs, and then a manila envelope from Prudential. I remembered this envelope. David had life insurance through his job at the factory. I remembered receiving the check for $20,000. I signed the paperwork. But there was another paper stapled to the back of the packet, a confirmation of benefits letter dated 2014, a year before we got married. Supplemental accidental death policy, $200,000. Primary beneficiary, Martha Miller. The world stopped. David had a second policy, an old policy he took out when he was single, probably convinced by his mother to protect the future. When we got married, he must have forgotten to change the beneficiary. Or maybe Martha told him, "Don't worry, honey, I'll keep the paperwork safe." When David died of the aneurysm, was it classified as natural causes? No. I remembered the coroner's report. He had fallen at work and hit his head before the aneurysm burst. There was a dispute over whether the fall or the aneurysm came first. The insurance company must have paid out the accidental death benefit, $200,000. Martha received $200,000 the week we buried my husband. I remembered the funeral. I remembered Martha holding my hand, wearing her cheap black dress, which I now knew was theater, saying, "We will get through this together, Sarah, even if we end up destitute." She had $200,000 in her bank account at that exact moment. And yet, she took my $200 on the first of the next month, and the month after that, and the month after that. She took my $12,000 not because she needed it, but because she could. It was a power play. It was the stupidity tax. I felt a hot tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't sadness. It was pure, distilled hate. But I needed more than assumptions. I needed irrefutable proof that she was lying about her current situation to continue extorting me. And more importantly, I needed to know if she was making other mistakes. Greedy people rarely steal from just one source. I went back to the computer. If she had $200,000 and bought the house, she still had a $150,000 mortgage and high HOA fees. Her retired teacher's pension wouldn't cover all that, plus the Lexus lifestyle. How was she maintaining the cash flow? I remembered the medical bills she used to send me sometimes. They were photos of invoices, poorly framed, sent via WhatsApp. I opened our chat history. I scrolled back months. I found a photo of a pharmacy invoice. Walgreens, total $45. Patient, Martha Miller. Insurance, Medicaid state benefit. I paused. Medicaid. Medicaid is a program for low-income individuals. To qualify in our state, you cannot have liquid assets over $2,000, excluding a primary residence and one modest car. If she had a fat bank account or investments, she shouldn't qualify. But if she spent all the insurance money on the house down payment, she might be house rich and cash poor.
But wait, the car, the Lexus SUV. I went back to the mental photos I took earlier today. The license plate. I had memorized the plate. LUVMYLIF. Seriously, Martha. I used a VinCheck website. Cost me $10, but it was worth it. The car wasn't in Martha's name. It was registered to the David Miller Memorial Trust. She created a trust fund using my dead husband's name to hide her assets. She was driving a luxury car bought with his death money, shielding it in a trust so the government wouldn't see the asset and continue paying for her meds and doctor visits. That is welfare fraud. That is fraud against the state. I leaned back in my chair. It was 5 a.m. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky a cold gray. I had the pieces of the puzzle. She received $200,000 from David's insurance, morally mine, legally hers, but hidden from me. She used the money to buy a luxury condo behind my back. She was extorting me $200 monthly, claiming absolute poverty. She was likely committing Medicaid fraud by hiding the luxury car in a trust. I looked at the stack of bills on my desk, the electric bill I was delaying to pay her fee. Could I go to the police? Maybe. Medicaid fraud is a crime. Could I sue her? Maybe. But lawyers are expensive. No. I wanted something more personal. I wanted her to feel the squeeze. I wanted her to feel the panic of having no money, the panic I felt every month for 5 years. I picked up my phone. I opened my banking app. Today was the 30th. The automatic payment of $200 was scheduled to go out tomorrow. Cancel payment. But that wasn't enough. Simply stopping payment was defense. I wanted to attack. I needed to get inside that house. I needed to see the trust papers. I needed to record a confession of her admitting she had money, so that when I reported her to the state, she couldn't claim it was a clerical error. I needed a reconciliation visit. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. The dark circles under my eyes were deep. "You are a good nurse, Sarah," I said to my reflection. "You know how to handle difficult patients. You give them what they want until they lower their guard. Martha wanted money. I would give her the promise of money. Martha wanted pity. I would give her the best performance of my life." I picked up the phone and typed a message to her. "Hi, Martha. Sorry about yesterday. I couldn't get the cash, but I got some incredible news. The hospital is paying out a retroactive bonus for overtime. It's a large amount. I wanted to take you to dinner and give you the $300 and maybe discuss how I can help you pay off your debts for good. Where are you living now? Mr. Henderson said you moved. Send." The bait was in the water. A shark like Martha can't resist the smell of a retroactive bonus. 3 minutes later, the phone buzzed. "Oh, honey, what wonderful news. Thank God. I was praying for a miracle. I'm staying at a friend's house in Willow Creek temporarily house-sitting for her. Come for tea this afternoon. I have so much to tell you." Liar. House-sitting for a friend. I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. "I'm coming, Martha," I whispered, "and I'm bringing my stethoscope because we're going to listen to your heart stop beating when I'm done with you."
Acting is not so different from nursing. In both professions, you have to hide your true feelings behind a professional smile. You have to tell people everything is going to be okay, even when you know they are terminal. Martha was terminal. She just didn't know it yet. I pulled into the driveway of Unit 12. The Lexus was gone, hidden in the garage, no doubt. Martha was thorough. She opened the door before I could knock. Gone was the tennis outfit. Gone were the highlights, hidden under a frumpy scarf. She was wearing an old, oversized cardigan that smelled faintly of mothballs. She was hunched over, leaning on a cane I had never seen before. "Sarah," she wheezed, pulling me into a weak hug. "Oh, thank you for coming. It's been so lonely here." "Ideally located, though," I said, stepping inside. "Your friend has a beautiful home." "Oh, yes," Martha sighed, closing the heavy oak door. "Mrs. Vanderbilt is currently in Paris. She lets me stay here to keep the dust off. It's a charity, really. I sleep in the servants' quarters in the back." Liar. I walked into the living room.
It was magnificent. High ceilings, a marble fireplace, and furniture that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. But the devil is in the details. I noticed a framed photo on the mantelpiece. It was turned face down. "May I?" I asked, reaching for it. "No," Martha shouted, then coughed violently to cover her slip. "I mean, Mrs. Vanderbilt is very private. She doesn't like her things touched." I pulled my hand back. "Of course, sorry." I sat on the white sofa. Martha sat opposite me, groaning as she lowered herself. She poured tea from a silver pot. "So," she said, her eyes gleaming with a hunger she couldn't hide, "you mentioned a bonus." "Yes," I lied smoothly. "The hospital settled a lawsuit regarding unpaid overtime from the pandemic. I'm getting a check, about $5,000. Martha gasped. She actually licked her lips. It was grotesque. "5,000, she whispered. "Oh, Sarah, that's life-changing. David is watching over you. He made this happen." "He worried about you so much," I said, sipping the tea. It was Earl Grey, expensive loose leaf. "He wanted to make sure you were safe. That's why I wanted to use the money to pay off your debts. You mentioned the landlord and the medical bills?" "Yes, yes," Martha nodded frantically. "The debt collectors are calling every day. I'm so afraid, Sarah. If you could write me a check, I could handle them all at once. I could finally breathe." I brought my checkbook. I patted my purse. "But first, I need to use the restroom. The drive over was long." "Oh, of course," Martha pointed down the hall. "Use the powder room, the small one near the entrance." "Thanks." I walked down the hall. I passed the powder room. I kept walking. "Sarah," Martha called out, her voice sharpening. "That's the master suite, Mrs. Vanderbilt's room. You can't go in there." "Just looking for the light switch," I called back. I opened the double doors to the master bedroom. It wasn't a Mrs. Vanderbilt's room. It was Martha's room. There were photos of Martha everywhere. Martha on a cruise ship, Martha at a casino, Martha holding a trophy at a tennis tournament. And on the bedside table, next to a bottle of sleeping pills, was a stack of mail. I moved fast. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I grabbed the mail. Statement, Willow Creek HOA. Address to Martha Miller. Statement, Vanguard Investment Services. Address to the David Miller Memorial Trust. I opened the investment statement. My eyes scanned the numbers. Total portfolio value, $145,000. She hadn't spent it all on the house. She still had nearly $150,000 invested in mutual funds. I took out my phone. I snapped a photo of the statement. I snapped a photo of the HOA bill. Then I saw it, the Holy Grail. On the desk, there was a notepad. Martha had been doodling. She had written a list. To buy: 1. New golf clubs, $1,200. 2. Ticket to Cabo, $800. Sarah's tax due November 1st, $200. She literally wrote it down. Sarah's tax. I felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't just using me, she despised me. I was a line item in her budget, right next to golf clubs. I took a photo of the note. "Sarah!" I heard the cane tapping aggressively on the hardwood floor. She was coming. I shoved the papers back into the messy stack. I flushed the toilet in the master bathroom to create noise. I walked out, wiping my hands on my scrubs. Martha was standing in the hallway. Her face was red. She wasn't hunching anymore. "I told you not to go in there," she hissed. "I got lost," I said, putting on my best apologetic face. "It's such a big house. I'm sorry. I didn't touch anything." She studied me. She was looking for a crack in my mask. "Well," she huffed, adjusting her cardigan, "let's get back to the tea and the check." We sat back down. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "So," Martha said, holding out her hand, "the 5,000. It would mean so much. I could stop worrying about food." I looked at her outstretched hand. It was manicured, French tips, freshly done. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my checkbook. I pulled out a pen. Martha smiled. It was the smile of a predator watching a rabbit walk into a trap. I wrote the date. I stopped. I looked up at her. "Martha," I said softly, "do you believe in ghosts?" She blinked. "What?" "Ghosts. David, do you think he can see us right now?" "Of course," she said piously. "He is smiling down on his generous wife." "I wonder," I mused, tapping the pen on the table, "I wonder if he can see the David Miller Memorial Trust." The color drained from Martha's face instantly. It was like watching paint dry in reverse. She went pale, then gray. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "The trust," I said clearly. "The one with the Vanguard portfolio, the one that owns the Lexus in the garage, the one funded by the accidental death policy you hid from me." Martha stood up. She dropped the cane. She didn't need it. "You snooped," she snarled. Her voice changed. The wheeze was gone. It was cold, hard. "You ungrateful little brat. I invited you into my home." "Mrs. Vanderbilt's home," I corrected. "Cut the crap, Sarah," she shouted. "So what? So I have some money. I'm his mother. I raised him. I deserve it. You're young. You can work. I'm old. You're 60, and you played tennis 3 times a week." "I did what I had to do to survive," she yelled. "David would have wanted me to have it." "David wanted you to be safe. He didn't want you to rob his widow." "Rob?" she laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. "You gave me that money willingly. You wanted to play the martyr. Oh, look at me, the grieving widow, sacrificing for poor mama. It made you feel good. I just gave you the opportunity. You committed fraud, Medicaid fraud, welfare fraud, and insurance fraud, depending on how you filed those claims. Who is going to believe you?" she sneered. "You're a tired nurse in a Honda Civic. I'm a grieving mother. I'll tell them you're crazy. I'll tell you you're harassing me." I tapped my chest pocket. The phone was still recording. "Maybe," I said, "but I think the IRS takes tips very seriously, especially when they come with photos of bank statements." I put the checkbook back in my purse. "I'm leaving now, Martha." "Wait," she lunged forward. "Sarah, wait. Don't be rash. We can share. I can give you some of it. 10,000? Is that what you want?" "I don't want your money," I said, walking to the door. "I want my life back." "If you report me," she hissed, her eyes wild, "I'll lose everything. They'll take the house. They'll put me in jail." I opened the door. The sun was setting over Willow Creek, casting long shadows over the perfect lawns. "Martha," I said, looking back at her one last time. "Yes?" she asked, hopeful. "You better call Mrs. Vanderbilt." I smiled. "Tell her the house-sitting gig is over." I slammed the door. I walked to my car. My legs felt like jelly. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I took the phone out of my pocket. I pressed stop recording. File saved. MarthaConfession.mp3. I looked at the house. I saw the curtain twitch. She was watching me. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't tired. I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. I felt free. But freedom wasn't enough. David deserved justice, and I deserved a refund. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. I was going to the Social Security Administration office, and then I was going to call a lawyer. The tea party was over. Now the hangover began.
Acting is not so different from nursing. In both professions, you have to hide your true feelings behind a professional smile. You have to tell people everything is going to be okay, even when you know they are terminal. Martha was terminal. She just didn't know it yet. I pulled into the driveway of Unit 12. The Lexus was gone, hidden in the garage, no doubt. Martha was thorough. She opened the door before I could knock. Gone was the tennis outfit. Gone were the highlights, hidden under a frumpy scarf. She was wearing an old, oversized cardigan that smelled faintly of mothballs. She was hunched over, leaning on a cane I had never seen before. "Sarah," she wheezed, pulling me into a weak hug. "Oh, thank you for coming. It's been so lonely here." "Ideally located, though," I said, stepping inside. "Your friend has a beautiful home."
Oh, yes, Martha sighed, closing the heavy oak door. Mrs. Vanderbilt is currently in Paris. She lets me stay here to keep the dust off. It's a charity, really. I sleep in the servants' quarters in the back. Liar. I walked into the living room. It was magnificent. High ceilings, a marble fireplace, and furniture that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. But the devil is in the details. I noticed a framed photo on the mantelpiece. It was turned face down. May I asked, reaching for it. No, Martha shouted, then coughed violently to cover her slip. I mean, Mrs. Vanderbilt is very private. She doesn't like her things touched. I pulled my hand back. Of course, sorry. I sat on the white sofa. Martha sat opposite me, groaning as she lowered herself. She poured tea from a silver pot. So, she said, her eyes gleaming with a hunger she couldn't hide, you mentioned a bonus. Yes, I lied smoothly. The hospital settled a lawsuit regarding unpaid overtime from the pandemic. I'm getting a check, about $5,000. Martha gasped. She actually licked her lips. It was grotesque. 5,000, she whispered. Oh, Sarah, that's life-changing. David is watching over you. He made this happen. He worried about you so much, I said, sipping the tea. It was Earl Grey, expensive loose leaf. He wanted to make sure you were safe. That's why I wanted to use the money to pay off your debts. You mentioned the landlord and the medical bills? Yes, Martha nodded frantically. The debt collectors are calling every day. I'm so afraid, Sarah. If you could write me a check, I could handle them all at once. I could finally breathe. I brought my checkbook. I patted my purse. But first, I need to use the restroom. The drive over was long. Oh, of course, Martha pointed down the hall. Use the powder room, the small one near the entrance. Thanks. I walked down the hall. I passed the powder room. I kept walking. Sarah, Martha called out, her voice sharpening. That's the master suite, Mrs. Vanderbilt's room. You can't go in there. Just looking for the light switch, I called back. I opened the double doors to the master bedroom. It wasn't a Mrs. Vanderbilt's room. It was Martha's room. There were photos of Martha everywhere. Martha on a cruise ship, Martha at a casino, Martha holding a trophy at a tennis tournament. And on the bedside table, next to a bottle of sleeping pills, was a stack of mail. I moved fast. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I grabbed the mail. Statement, Willow Creek HOA. Addressed to Martha Miller. Statement, Vanguard Investment Services. Addressed to the David Miller Memorial Trust. I opened the investment statement. My eyes scanned the numbers. Total portfolio value, $145,000. She hadn't spent it all on the house. She still had nearly $150,000 invested in mutual funds. I took out my phone. I snapped a photo of the statement. I snapped a photo of the HOA bill. Then I saw it, the Holy Grail. On the desk, there was a notepad. Martha had been doodling. She had written a list. To buy, 1. New golf clubs, $1,200. 2. Ticket to Cabo, $800. Sarah's tax due November 1st, $200. She literally wrote it down. Sarah's tax. I felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't just using me, she despised me. I was a line item in her budget, right next to golf clubs. I took a photo of the note. Sarah! I heard the cane tapping aggressively on the hardwood floor. She was coming. I shoved the papers back into the messy stack. I flushed the toilet in the master bathroom to create noise. I walked out, wiping my hands on my scrubs. Martha was standing in the hallway. Her face was red. She wasn't hunching anymore. I told you not to go in there, she hissed. I got lost, I said, putting on my best apologetic face. It's such a big house. I'm sorry. I didn't touch anything. She studied me. She was looking for a crack in my mask. Well, she huffed, adjusting her cardigan, let's get back to the tea and the check. We sat back down. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. So, Martha said, holding out her hand, the 5,000. It would mean so much. I could stop worrying about Food. I looked at her outstretched hand. It was manicured, French tips, freshly done. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my checkbook. I pulled out a pen. Martha smiled. It was the smile of a predator watching a rabbit walk into a trap. I wrote the date. I stopped. I looked up at her. "Martha," I said softly, "do you believe in ghosts?" She blinked. "What?" "Ghosts. David. Do you think he can see us right now?" "Of course," she said piously. "He is smiling down on his generous wife." "I wonder," I mused, tapping the pen on the table, "I wonder if he can see the David Miller Memorial Trust." The color drained from Martha's face instantly. It was like watching paint dry in reverse. She went pale, then gray. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "The trust," I said clearly. "The one with the Vanguard portfolio, the one that owns the Lexus in the garage, the one funded by the accidental death policy you hid from me." Martha stood up. She dropped the cane. She didn't need it. "You snooped," she snarled. Her voice changed. The wheeze was gone. It was cold, hard. "You ungrateful little brat. I invited you into my home." "Mrs. Vanderbilt's home," I corrected. "Cut the crap, Sarah," she shouted. "So what? So I have some money. I'm his mother. I raised him. I deserve it. You're young. You can work. I'm old. You're 60, and you played tennis 3 times a week." "I did what I had to do to survive," she yelled. "David would have wanted me to have it." "David wanted you to be safe. He didn't want you to rob his widow." "Rob?" she laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. "You gave me that money willingly. You wanted to play the martyr. Oh, look at me, the grieving widow, sacrificing for poor mama. It made you feel good. I just gave you the opportunity. You committed fraud, Medicaid fraud, welfare fraud, and insurance fraud, depending on how you filed those claims. Who is going to believe you?" she sneered. "You're a tired nurse in a Honda Civic. I'm a grieving mother. I'll tell them you're crazy. I'll tell you you're harassing me." I tapped my chest pocket. The phone was still recording. "Maybe," I said, "but I think the IRS takes tips very seriously, especially when they come with photos of bank statements." I put the checkbook back in my purse. "I'm leaving now, Martha." "Wait," she lunged forward. "Sarah, wait. Don't be rash. We can share. I can give you some of it. 10,000? Is that what you want?" "I don't want your money," I said, walking to the door. "I want my life back." "If you report me," she hissed, her eyes wild, "I'll lose everything. They'll take the house. They'll put me in jail." I opened the door. The sun was setting over Willow Creek, casting long shadows over the perfect lawns. "Martha," I said, looking back at her one last time. "Yes?" she asked, hopeful. "You better call Mrs. Vanderbilt." I smiled. "Tell her the house-sitting gig is over." I slammed the door. I walked to my car. My legs felt like jelly. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I took the phone out of my pocket. I pressed stop recording. File saved. MarthaConfession.mp3. I looked at the house. I saw the curtain twitch. She was watching me. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't tired. I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. I felt free. But freedom wasn't enough. David deserved justice, and I deserved a refund. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. I was going to the Social Security Administration office, and then I was going to call a lawyer. The tea party was over. Now the hangover began.
Narcissists have a favorite military tactic: divide and conquer. They keep their victims separated. They tell version A to one person and version B to another, ensuring that the two never compare notes. If the victims never talk, the lie never dies. Martha had kept me and Mark separated for years. Mark is David's younger brother. He moved to Oregon 5 years ago, right after the funeral. I always thought he was cold. He rarely called, he never visited. When I told Martha I missed him, she would sigh and say, "Oh, Sarah, he's just so busy with his new life." And honestly, he thinks you're moving on too fast. He finds it painful to talk to you. I believed her, so I stopped calling him. I didn't want to cause him pain. But now I questioned everything. I sat at my kitchen table. My laptop was open to an email draft. Subject, the truth about mom. To mark.miller@gmail.com. Attachments, Vanguard statement.jpg, HOA bill.jpg, Martha confession.mp3. I stared at the send button. If I sent this, I wasn't just exposing a fraud, I was destroying a mother-son relationship. Mark was the only family she had left. Then I looked at the to-buy list again, Sarah's tax. I hit send. The response wasn't immediate. I waited an hour, 2 hours. At 7 p.m., my phone rang. Mark Miller. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Mark? Sarah? His voice was rough. He sounded like he had been running. Is this real? The email? Is this a joke? It's not a joke, Mark. I took the photos myself 3 days ago inside her house in Willow Creek. $345,000? Mark whispered. She bought a condo for that much, cash? Yes, with the insurance money from David's accident policy, the one she hid from us. There was a long silence on the line. I expected him to be angry about the money. People usually are. But Mark's next words chilled me to the bone. She told me she was broke, Sarah. Mark said, his voice trembling. She told me she gave you all the insurance money. She said you took the $20,000 and the house equity and left her with nothing. My jaw dropped. She said what? For 5 years, Sarah. For 5 years, she's been calling me crying. She said you abandoned her. She said you refused to help her with rent. She said she was living in squalor apartments because you took everything David left. I have been sending her $200 a month, I screamed, tears springing to my eyes. I have been starving myself to pay her bills. She told me you didn't care. I have been sending her $500 a month, Mark said quietly. The world tilted on its axis. You, what? $500 every month since 2019. She said she needed it for medicine. She said she didn't want to ask you because you were so selfish and money hungry. We sat there in silence, 2 coasts apart, united by a single horrifying realization. She played us. She told me Mark was distant and judgmental, so I wouldn't call him. She told Mark I was greedy and heartless, so he wouldn't call me. And while we sat in our respective homes, feeling guilty and ashamed, sending her checks, she was collecting $700 a month from her grieving children, plus the investment income, plus the pension. She was making over $1,000 a month just from our guilt. $12,000 from me. $30,000 from me, Mark calculated. That's $42,000 she stole from us, on top of the $200,000 she hid. Mark, I said, wiping my face. I reported her. Medicaid fraud, IRS, and I sued her. Her assets are frozen. Good, Mark said. The sadness in his voice was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger that sounded exactly like David used to sound when he saw injustice. Add me to the lawsuit. You want to sue your mother? I don't have a mother, Mark said. I have a con artist who used my dead brother's memory to rob me. She didn't just steal my money, Sarah. She stole my relationship with you. I missed my sister-in-law. I thought you hated me. I never hated you, Mark. I'm flying out. Tomorrow morning. I want to be there when she realizes the game is up. And Sarah? Yes? Don't let her talk to you until I get there. She's going to try to spin this. She's going to try to triangulate us again. She can't, because now we have each other's numbers. The confrontation. Mark arrived the next afternoon. He came straight to my house. He looked so much like David it hurt. Same eyes, same messy hair, but he looked tired. We didn't hug immediately. We stood there, looking at each other, unraveling 5 years of lies. Then he stepped forward and crushed me in a bear hug. I'm sorry, he muttered into my hair. I should have called. Me too. We sat at the kitchen table with Mr. Katz, the lawyer. We updated the filing. Plaintiffs, Sarah Miller and Mark Miller. Then Martha's phone started ringing, or rather, Mark's phone started ringing. Mom calling.
She can't reach me because I blocked her. She can't use her cards because they're frozen. She's moving down the list. Mark put the phone on the table. He put it on speaker. Hello, Mark? Mark. Martha's voice was hysterical. Oh, thank God. Something terrible is happening. There must be a glitch at the bank. My card was declined at the gas station. I'm stranded. And Sarah has gone crazy. She sent some man to serve me papers. She's trying to sue me. You have to talk to her. She won't listen to reason. Mark looked at me. He looked at the phone. I know, Mom, Mark said coldly. You know? Good. Tell her to stop this madness. Tell her. I know because I'm sitting in her kitchen. Silence. Dead silence on the line. You're in Chicago? Martha's voice dropped an octave. Yes, and Sarah and I have been comparing notes. It's funny, Mom. You told me Sarah was rich and greedy. You told Mark I was distant and cold. But looking at the bank statement Sarah showed me, the only greedy person seems to be the one with the Lexus. Mark, listen to me. Martha scrambled, her voice pitching up into that fake panic. You don't understand. It's complicated. I was protecting the money for you, for the family. For us? Mark laughed. Is that why you spent it on golf clubs? Is that why you took $30,000 from me while sitting on a pile of cash? I was going to leave it to you in my will. We don't want your will, Mom. We want the truth. Sarah filed the fraud report. I'm joining the civil suit. We're coming for everything. The house, the trust, the car, the $42,000 you stole from us. You can't do this, she screamed. I gave birth to you. And you buried my brother, Mark said, his voice cracking. And then you cashed in on his death. Don't ever call me again. He hung up. We sat in the silence of the kitchen. It was done. The divide and conquer strategy was shattered. But Martha Miller was a woman who didn't go down without a fight. She was cornered, she was broke, temporarily, and she had just lost her last emotional punching bag. She's going to do something desperate, I said. Let her, Mark said, pouring coffee. We have the lawyers, we have the evidence. What can she possibly do? We underestimated her. We thought this was a legal battle. We forgot that Martha was a master of public perception. If she couldn't control us anymore, she would try to destroy our reputations. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital for my shift. My supervisor, Nurse Ratchet, was waiting for me at the station. She held a tablet. Sarah, we need to talk. HR just received a complaint and it's disturbing. I looked at the screen. It was a Facebook post from Martha Miller, tagging the hospital, tagging the local news. Heartbroken, my daughter-in-law, a nurse at County General, has been abusing me, stealing my pain medication, taking advantage of a grieving widow with dementia. Please, someone help me. She's trying to put me on the street. It had 400 shares. Martha wasn't just fighting for money anymore. She was fighting for her narrative. She was willing to burn my career to the ground to save face. I looked at Mark, who had driven me to work. Game on, I whispered. She wanted a public war. She forgot one thing. I work in a hospital. We document everything, including drug inventory, and I had a drug test result from my annual physical last week. Clean. Mark, I said, call Mr. Katz. We're adding defamation of character to the lawsuit. The family feud had just gone nuclear.
A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. Martha's lie had traveled fast. By 9 a.m., the Facebook post had 600 shares. The comments were vitriolic. Fire this nurse. Elder abuser. I hope she loses her license. Mrs. Gable turned her tablet around to face me. Nurse Miller, she said, her voice tight. We have received 20 calls this morning demanding your termination. The allegation is that you are stealing narcotics from a patient, your mother-in-law, and financially abusing her. This is a PR nightmare. It's also a lie, I said calmly. I reached into my bag. I didn't bring emotions, I brought data. First, I slid a paper across the desk. This is my drug screening from last week's physical. Negative for opioids, amphetamines, and benzodiazepines. If I'm stealing her meds, I am certainly not taking them. Mrs. Gable looked at the paper. Okay, but the financial abuse? Second, I slid the next paper. This is a copy of the restraining order signed by Judge Harrison yesterday, freezing Martha Miller's assets due to probable cause of fraud and dissipation of estate. The court agrees that she is the one abusing the system, Mrs. Gable, not me. Mrs. Gable raised an eyebrow. A judge signed this? Yes, because Martha Miller is currently under investigation by the State Medicaid Fraud Control Unit for concealing over $200,000 in assets while claiming welfare benefits. The woman claiming I am starving her is driving a 2023 Lexus she bought with hidden insurance money. I leaned forward. I am the victim here, Mrs. Gable. I have been extorted for 5 years. This Facebook post, it's retaliation. It's the desperate act of a woman who knows she has been caught. Mrs. Gable read the court order. She read it twice. The tension in her shoulders dropped. Well, she sighed, that changes the narrative. I need the hospital to stand by me, I said. If you fire me based on a Facebook post from a fraudster, I will sue for wrongful termination, and I will add the hospital to the defamation suit I am filing against her. Mrs. Gable smiled. It was a small, impressed smile. You've become very litigious, Sarah. I've learned that being nice gets you robbed. Being litigious gets you respect. Go back to work, she said, sliding the papers back. I'll handle the PR. We will issue a statement supporting our staff and citing the pending legal investigation against the accuser. The court of public opinion. I kept my job, but the internet mob didn't care about HR policies. When I finished my shift, my phone was unusable. Hundreds of notifications, strangers finding my personal Instagram, DMs telling me to kill myself. I sat in my car with Mark. He was scrolling through the comments on Martha's post. This is bad, Sarah, he said. People believe her. She's playing the frail widow card perfectly. Look at this photo she posted. He showed me. It was a selfie of Martha, looking disheveled, holding a rosary with the caption, "Praying for my daughter-in-law's soul. I forgive her even as she tries to evict me." She's disgusting, I spat. She's winning, Mark corrected. Legally, we have her, but socially, she's destroying you. You can't live in this town if everyone thinks you abuse old ladies. So what do? We nuke her, Mark said. We release the tape. The confession? Yes, the Tea Party recording, where she admits she has the money, where she calls your payments a stupidity tax, where she laughs about playing the martyr. If we post that, I hesitated, there is no going back. It's total war. Sarah, Mark looked at me. She just accused you of being a drug addict on Facebook. War was declared this morning. We're just returning fire. He was right. We drove to my house. We opened my laptop. I edited the audio file. I cut out the small talk. I kept the meat. Martha's voice. You gave me that money willingly. You wanted to play the martyr. I just gave you the opportunity. Martha's voice. David would have wanted me to have it. My voice. You committed fraud. Martha's voice. Who is going to believe you? You're a tired nurse. I'm a grieving mother. It was perfect. It was damning. We logged into Mark's Facebook account. He had never posted anything public before. He wrote a simple caption. My mother, Martha Miller, posted today claiming my sister-in-law, Sarah, is abusing her. Here is the truth. Here is Martha admitting she hid $200,000 from us, bought a luxury condo, and called Sarah's financial help a stupidity tax. Listen for yourself. Upload. Then we waited. It started slow. A few likes, a few comments from Mark's friends in Oregon saying, holy shit. Then the algorithm picked it up. The same local news page that shared Martha's sob story saw Mark's post. They listened to the audio. They realized they had been played. Scandals are good for ratings, but twists are gold. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was from the Community Watch Group.
Has anyone heard this audio? That poor nurse. The monster is a monster. The tide turned so fast it caused whiplash. The comments on Martha's original post started to change. Delete this, you liar. I just heard the tape. You should be in jail. Stupidity tax? You are evil. By 10 p.m., the audio had 50,000 plays. Mark and I sat on the couch drinking cheap wine, watching the internet destroy Martha Miller. She's going to delete her account, I predicted. Too late, Mark grinned. Screenshots are forever. Then my phone rang. It wasn't Martha, it wasn't a lawyer. It was from the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Ms. Miller, a stiff voice asked, this is the HOA president. We saw the social media posts, and we heard the recording. Yes. Does your mother-in-law really live in Unit 12, under the guise of house sitting? She owns Unit 12, but she lied on her application to get in, and I believe the police are on their way to discuss her fraud. We have a strict code of conduct in Willow Creek. Police raids, social media scandals, this is unacceptable. We will be reviewing her residency status immediately. I hung up. I looked at Mark. She just lost the neighborhood, I said. She's about to lose a lot more, Mark pointed at the TV. The 10 p.m. news was starting. Update on the viral nurse story. New audio evidence suggests the grieving mother may be a wealthy fraudster. We go live to Willow Creek, where police have just arrived at the residence. We watched the screen. There, in grainy live footage, was a police cruiser parked in front of Unit 12. But they weren't there for the fraud, not yet. They were there because someone, probably a neighbor who heard the tape, called in a noise complaint. Or maybe, just maybe, Martha Miller was throwing a tantrum loud enough to wake the dead. I took a sip of wine. To the stupidity tax, I toasted. To the refund, Mark clinked his glass against mine. The defense was over. The counterattack was a success. But we weren't done. We still had to get the money back. And tomorrow we were going to open the David Miller Memorial Trust like a piñata.
Litigation is like an autopsy. You cut the subject open, peel back the layers of skin and tissue, and stare at the organs to find out what really killed the patient. In this case, the patient was Martha's bank account, and the cause of death was pure, unadulterated greed. "Welcome to Discovery," Mr. Katz said, turning on the projector. The judge granted us full access to the David Miller Memorial Trust records, dating back to its inception in 2019. He clicked a button. A spreadsheet filled the wall. "We call this the piñata," Katz grinned, "because when you hit it hard enough, all the candy falls out. And Martha, she ate a lot of candy." We spent the next 4 hours analyzing the spending. It was nauseating. The casino runs. Date, October 12, 2021. Venue, Horseshoe Casino. Withdrawal, $4,000. Date, October 13, 2021. Venue, Horseshoe Casino. Withdrawal, $2,500. "She wasn't just buying golf clubs," Mark muttered, reading the lines. "She has a gambling problem." "It gets better," Katz pointed to a recurring charge. The psychic payee. Madame Zora Spiritual Guidance. Amount $300 per week. "I spent $15,000 on a psychic?" I asked, incredulous. "Well, I was skipping lunch to save $5? Apparently, she needed spiritual validation for her theft," Katz noted dryly. We tracked the money. $345,000 for the condo, $50,000 for the Lexus, $40,000 in cash withdrawals, casinos, and lifestyle, $15,000 to the psychic, $10,000 on health supplements, which turned out to be an MLM pyramid scheme she joined. Out of the initial $200,000 insurance payout, plus the money she swindled from Mark and me, "What's left?" I asked. Katz tapped the screen. Current balance, $82,000. 82 grand, sighed Mark. "That's it? She blew through nearly $250,000 in 5 years? "It's recoverable," Katz said. "We can seize the remaining cash. We can force the sale of the condo and the car. You will get your money back, eventually.
But we found something else in the safety deposit box records. Katz walked to a physical box on the table. He put on white cotton gloves. When the court froze her assets, that included her safety deposit box at Chase Bank. We drilled it this morning. He pulled out a single yellowed piece of paper inside a plastic sleeve. This, Katz said, placing it gently on the table, is why she created the trust. It wasn't just to hide the money from Medicaid, it was to hide the money from you. I leaned in. Mark stood up and walked around the table. It was a form from Prudential Insurance. Title, Change of Beneficiary Request. Date, April 14th, 2019. 1 month before David died. I read the handwriting. It was David's blocky, messy script. Primary beneficiary, Sarah Miller, wife, percentage 100%. At the bottom was David's signature. But the received by stamp from the insurance company was missing. He filled it out, I whispered, my voice trembling. He filled it out to change it to me. He filled it out, Katz corrected, but he never mailed it. Or rather, he gave it to someone to mail. Katz flipped the paper over. On the back, in faint pencil, was a note in Martha's handwriting. A grocery list. Milk, eggs, stamp for David's form. She intercepted it, Mark said. The anger in his voice was terrifyingly quiet. She offered to mail it for him. He was sick. He trusted her. And she just kept it. She kept it in the safety deposit box, Katz explained. Why? Who knows? Maybe guilt, maybe she thought she needed it for records, but by keeping it, she provided the smoking gun. I stared at the paper. It wasn't just an old policy he forgot to change. He remembered. He tried to protect me. He tried to leave me secure. Martha didn't just capitalize on a mistake, she actively intercepted his last wish. She looked at her dying son, took the envelope that would secure her wife's future, and put it in a box so she could buy a condo. I felt a scream building in my chest. It wasn't a scream of sadness, it was a scream of war. This is criminal, I said. This isn't just civil anymore. This is mail fraud. This is theft. It is, Katz nodded, and since she used the U.S. Postal Service to facilitate the fraud, it's federal. Mark picked up the plastic sleeve. He looked at his mother's handwriting on the back. Stamp for David's form. She sold him for a condo, Mark said. He looked at me. Sarah, do we settle? Do we take the $82,000 and the house and walk away? I looked at David's signature. I imagined him handing the envelope to his mom, trusting her. No, I said. We don't settle. I turned to Katz. Mr. Katz, forward this document to the district attorney and to the Medicaid fraud unit. I want to press charges. I want her in prison. Prison is a hard road for a 60-year-old woman, Katz warned. The defense will play the frail grandma card. Let them, I said. We have the tape, we have the spending records, and we have this paper. She isn't a frail grandma, she is a predator. One more thing, Katz said. The foreclosure. The what? I asked. Since the assets are frozen, she hasn't paid her HOA fees or her utilities in 2 weeks. The HOA is already moving to put a lien on the unit, but since the deed was purchased with fraudulent funds, the state is looking to seize the property under civil asset forfeiture laws. Meaning? I asked. Meaning she's about to be homeless, for real time. Today, actually. The eviction notice for the unauthorized occupant, her, was posted by the HOA this morning. I looked at Mark. Do you want to go see the show? I asked. Mark looked at the photo of the Lexus. I'll drive, he said. The eviction. We didn't go to help, we went to witness. When we arrived at Willow Creek, it was raining, a fitting backdrop. A security guard was standing at the door of Unit 12. Martha was on the porch. She had 2 Louis Vuitton suitcases, likely fake or bought with my money, and a box of knickknacks. She was screaming at the guard. I own this house. You can't do this. I am a resident. Ma'am, the deed is frozen by the court and the HOA board has revoked your residency privileges due to fraud and moral turpitude. You have to leave the premises. She saw Mark's rental car pull up. She ran towards us. She looked wild. Her hair was wet, matted to her forehead. She banged on the passenger window. Mark, Sarah, help me. They're throwing me out. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. I rolled down the window just 2 inches. It's not a misunderstanding, Martha. It's an audit. I have nowhere to go, she shrieked. I have no money. The cards don't work. I know, but you have a pension, don't you? And I'm sure you have friends. Maybe Mrs. Vanderbilt can help you? She doesn't exist, she screamed. You know she doesn't exist. Mark leaned over. Here, he said, passing a piece of paper through the crack in the window. A check? She grabbed, hopeful. Is this a check? It wasn't a check. It was a copy of the change of beneficiary request, the one she hid. We found the box, Mom, Mark said. His voice broke just a little. We found the grocery list, stamp for David's form. Martha looked at the paper. The color drained from her face. She stepped back from the car as if she'd been burned. She knew there was no spinning this. There was no lie that could cover that signature. You stole him from us, Mark whispered. You stole his last act of love. She stammered. I needed security. You have security now, I said, rolling up the window. State security. The police are coming to pick you up for questioning regarding the insurance fraud. I suggest you wait right there. Sarah, Mark, don't leave me. I put the car in drive. As we pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Martha Miller standing in the rain with her stolen luggage, holding a piece of paper that proved she was a monster. The piñata was broken, the candy was rotten, and the party was over.
Justice doesn't bang a gavel like in the movies. It shuffles papers. It speaks in plea deals and sentencing guidelines. It is boring. But today, it was beautiful. Martha Miller, inmate number 492010, pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Her lawyer, a public defender who looked even more tired than I used to look, tried to argue for leniency. He cited her age, 62. He cited her health, which was miraculously frail again the moment the handcuffs went on. But the judge wasn't buying it, not after the prosecutor showed the slide of the to-buy list. Sarah's tax, $200. Mrs. Miller, the judge had said, peering over his glasses, you didn't steal out of necessity. You stole out of entitlement. You defrauded the government. You defrauded the insurance company. And most heinously, you defrauded your own grief-stricken children. The sentence: 5 years in federal prison, restitution of $242,000 to the state and the victims, 3 years of supervised release. When the bailiff led her away, she didn't look at us. She didn't scream. She looked small. The queen of Willow Creek was just an old woman in a beige jumpsuit who had gambled her family away and lost. We walked down the courthouse steps. Mark lit a cigarette. He had quit years ago, but today was an exception. 5 years, Mark said, exhaling smoke. She'll be 67 when she gets out. She'll have nothing. She has her pension, I said, and she has her memories of the Lexus. Do you feel better? Mark asked. I thought about it. Did I feel happy? No. Happiness implies joy. I felt clean. The stain was gone. The debt was paid. I feel done, I said. The settlement. The financial cleanup took another 6 months. The David Miller Memorial Trust was dissolved by the court. The condo in Willow Creek was seized and sold at auction. The Lexus was repossessed. The jewelry, the Mrs. Vanderbilt furniture, the golf clubs, all liquidated. After the state took its cut for the Medicaid fraud and the lawyers took their contingency fees, there was a check left over. Mr. Katz handed it to us in his office. Amount: $110,000. It's not the full $200,000, Katz apologized. She spent a lot on bad gambling and worse investments, but this is the recovered equity. $55,000 for Mark, $55,000 for me. It was more money than I had ever seen at one time. It's blood money, Mark said, looking at the check. It's not blood money, I corrected him. It's David's money. It's the safety net he tried to give us in 2019. It's just late. I took my check. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't quit my job. I walked to the parking lot and patted the hood of my rattling Honda Civic. Thank you for your service, I whispered. I went to a dealership. I bought a Toyota RAV4. Reliable, safe, heated seats. I paid cash. Then I paid off my student loans. Every penny.
I was debt-free for the first time in my adult life. But there was one thing left to do. The real memorial. I met Mark at the cemetery on the anniversary of David's death. The headstone was simple. David Miller, beloved husband and son. For 5 years, I had come here and cried, apologizing to him for not being able to take care of his mother. I'd whispered to the dirt, begging for forgiveness for my poverty. Today, I didn't cry. I placed a laminated copy of the change of beneficiary form on the grass, the one with his signature. You did good, David. You tried. I know that now. You didn't leave me with nothing. You left me with everything I needed. It just took me a while to find the receipt. Mark stood beside me. I used half my share to start a college fund for my kids. Mark would have liked that, being the rich uncle. And the other half? I'm taking the family to Disneyland, Mark smiled. No guilt trip, just fun. Good. What about you, Sarah? What are you doing with the rest? I looked at the horizon. I'm taking a trip, I said. Not to Cabo. I'm going to Italy. David and I always talked about it. I'm going to drink wine, eat pasta, and not worry about the price of anything. And the stupidity tax, Mark joked. The tax office is closed, permanently. We walked back to our cars. The sun was setting, casting long, warm shadows. I got into my new car. The engine started with a quiet, powerful hum. No rattles, no warning lights. I looked at my phone. Blocked number calling. It was the prison collect call line. Martha used her one phone call a week to try to reach us. She never stopped trying. I didn't decline it. I didn't answer it. I went to my settings. Block unknown callers. I put the phone in the cup holder. I put the car in drive. I drove out of the cemetery, past the courthouse, past the hospital. I got on the highway and headed toward the airport. The rearview mirror was clear. No one was following me. No one was draining me. I turned up the radio. My husband died years ago. Every month I sent his mom $200. But then I stopped. And then I started to live.